The stars looked different from the observation deck of the Pioneer. Captain James Walker stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching as the unknown ship grew larger in the view screen. After decades of searching the stars, humanity had finally found what it was looking for. They were not alone. "They're responding to our transmission, Captain," said Mark, the communications officer. His voice trembled slightly. Walker nodded. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and Walker felt his breath catch. The alien was tall, with smooth skin that seemed to glow from within. It had 4 arms and large, intelligent eyes that reminded Walker of deep ocean waters. When it spoke, the ship's computer translated. "We are the Bright Ones. We accept your greeting." First contact. Walker had trained for this moment his entire career, but no training could prepare him for the rush of emotions. Hope, wonder, pride. He was representing all of humanity. "I am Captain James Walker of Earth. We come in peace and friendship." The meeting was set for neutral space, a small station hastily prepared between the 2 ships. Walker brought a small team. Dr. Lisa Grant, their top biologist, Robert, their language specialist, and 2 security officers who Walker ordered to keep their weapons holstered. The Bright Ones arrived in gleaming suits that seemed to capture and redirect light. Their leader, who called himself Ambassador, moved with a fluid grace that made Walker feel clumsy and heavy in comparison. "We have encountered many species in our travels," the ambassador said as they sat at the round table. "It is always interesting to discover new forms of life." The first hours went well. They exchanged basic information about their worlds. The Bright Ones had mastered faster than light travel centuries ago. They spoke of a galactic community of advanced species and showed images of massive ring-shaped cities orbiting distant stars. Then the ambassador asked to study human biology. "It helps us understand new friends," he explained, as Dr. Grant carefully shared medical scans and biological data. The ambassador's expression changed as he examined the information. His inner light seemed to dim slightly, and he exchanged glances with his companions. "Is something wrong?" Walker asked. "You are carbon-based primates," the ambassador said slowly. "Your genetic structure is remarkably similar to the lesser apes of your planet." "We evolved from common ancestors," Dr. Grant explained. "But our intelligence—" "Yes, you have achieved basic tool use and primitive space travel," the ambassador interrupted. His voice had changed, taking on a tone that Walker recognized from his time as a junior officer, the voice of someone speaking to a child. "We have created art, literature, music," Robert said, his face flushing. "We've cured diseases and built a peaceful global society." The ambassador made a gesture that the translator couldn't interpret. "All species develop at their own pace, some faster than others." Walker felt a chill run down his spine. The mood in the room had shifted. "We were hoping to discuss trade, cultural exchange," Walker said carefully. "Perhaps joining this galactic community you mentioned." The ambassador stood abruptly. "That would be premature. Your species needs more time to develop. We will monitor your evolution and perhaps return when you have advanced beyond your current state." "Our current state?" Walker asked, standing as well. "You are clever apes who have learned to use tools," the ambassador said, his tone gentle but unmistakably condescending. "It is impressive, but you are not ready for true galactic citizenship. Some species never are." The meeting ended shortly after. As the Bright Ones returned to their ship, Walker stood at the viewport, watching their sleek vessel pull away. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. "What happens now, Captain?" Dr. Grant asked quietly. Walker didn't look away from the stars. "Now we prove them wrong." He didn't know it then, but those 4 words would set humanity on a path that would shake the galaxy. The Bright Ones had made a crucial mistake. They had judged humans by their past, not their potential. And they had done the one thing guaranteed to unite all of humanity. They had given them something to prove. 5 years passed since the meeting with the Bright Ones. The encounter had changed Earth in ways no one expected. Countries that had argued for centuries now worked together. Humanity had a common goal: prove they were more than clever apes. Lieutenant Anna Hayes stared at her screen, rubbing her tired eyes. For 3 months, she had been tracking strange events across the solar system. Equipment failures on Mars, missing supply shipments near Europa, unusual energy readings that appeared and disappeared. Most people blamed faulty systems or human error. Hayes didn't believe in coincidences. "You're still here." Jack, her assistant, placed a cup of coffee beside her. "It's past midnight." "Look at this." Hayes pointed to a pattern of dots on her screen. "These are all the incidents from the past month. Now watch what happens when I map the movements of that unknown object," the Jupiter station reported. The dots connected, forming a clear path. "Something is moving through our solar system," she said. "Something that doesn't want to be seen." Jack leaned closer. "You think it's them? The bright ones?" Hayes nodded. "I think they never left." The next morning, Hayes requested an emergency meeting with the United Earth Council. 5 years ago, they might have ignored a lieutenant with a wild theory. But the world had changed. Admiral Walker was there. His hair had more gray now, and his face showed new lines, but his eyes still burned with the same intensity Hayes remembered from news reports of first contact. "Lieutenant, we have 10 minutes, said the council head. "Make them count." Hayes brought up her evidence on the main screen. "The bright ones told us they would monitor our evolution. I believe they're doing exactly that. But they're not just watching." She showed them the patterns, the missing resources, the unexplained energy signatures. "They're studying us like lab rats," she continued, "testing our responses. And they're taking our resources, quietly, carefully, but definitely taking them." The room was silent. Then Walker spoke. "Why now? Why show yourself after 5 years?" "Because 3 days ago, I recorded this." Hayes played the final piece of evidence. A transmission intercepted near Europa. The language was alien, but certain words had been translated thanks to the first contact data. "Resource extraction, primitive level, suitable for harvesting." Walker's face hardened. "They never saw us as equals to meet," he said quietly. "They saw us as resources to use." The council immediately ordered increased security throughout the solar system. Hayes was promoted and given a special team to track Bright 1 activity. But they were too late. 2 weeks later, at the Europa Research Station, Dr. Paul Reed was finishing his shift when the alarm sounded. The station shook. Through the viewport, he saw strange lights descending toward the moon's surface. "Emergency protocol." The station commander shouted, "Everyone to the shelters." Reed ran, helping others along the way. Behind him, the station walls tore open. Bright light flooded in. Not the cold darkness of space, but a blinding, painful light. He saw them then, the bright ones. But they weren't the diplomatic visitors from the videos. These moved with cold precision, their 4 arms carrying devices Reed didn't recognize. "This area is claimed for necessary resource extraction," one announced, its voice somehow inside Reed's head. "Primitive occupants will be relocated. This is our home." The station commander stepped forward. "You have no right." A flash of light, and the commander fell. More flashes. More people fell. Reed managed to pull himself and 3 others into an emergency pod. As they ejected from the station, he watched through the small window as the bright ones methodically moved through what had been his home for 2 years. The pod's communication system crackled to life. "Europa survivors, this is Earth Defense. We're tracking you. Help is coming." But Reed wasn't looking at the communication panel. He was watching as the beautiful research station, built by human hands as a testament to human curiosity and determination, was being dismantled by beings who saw it as nothing more than a primitive nest to be cleared away. "They called us apes," he whispered, his hands clenching. "They'll regret that." The attack on Europa changed everything. 327 dead, hundreds more injured. The survivors' testimonies played on every screen across Earth and the colonies. Dr. Paul Reed became the face of the tragedy, his hollow eyes and quiet voice more powerful than any shouting could have been. They didn't even see us as a threat, he told the world. They saw us as pests to be cleared away. The United Earth Council declared a state of emergency. Military ships rushed to protect the remaining outposts. Admiral Walker, who had warned about the Bright Ones for years, was given command of Earth's defense fleet. In his new office on the orbital station Guardian, Walker studied the reports from Europa. The Bright Ones' technology was far beyond Earth's current capabilities. Their weapons cut through the station's strongest shields like they weren't there. They could move faster than any human ship. They could appear and disappear almost at will. Admiral, his aide entered. The Council has approved your request. They're waiting for you. Walker straightened his uniform. Any word from the Bright Ones? Yes, sir. They sent a message an hour ago. They've claimed Europa as a primitive resource extraction point. They say they've shown restraint by not claiming more. Walker's jaw tightened. Restraint. The council chamber was tense when Walker arrived. The 12 representatives of Earth's unified regions sat in a half-circle, their faces grim. Above them, a large screen showed the Bright One ship orbiting Europa. We've agreed to your plan, Admiral, the council head said. Attempt one final diplomatic solution before we commit to military action. We cannot win. Walker nodded and stepped to the communication station. The technician opened the channel. This is Admiral James Walker of Earth. I request to speak with the Bright One's leadership regarding the attack on Europa. The screen flickered. The ambassador appeared, still elegant, still glowing with that inner light. But Walker now saw the coldness behind those deep ocean eyes. Admiral Walker. The ambassador's tone was like an adult addressing a child having a tantrum. Your species continues to surprise us with its emotional reactions. You killed hundreds of our people, Walker said, keeping his voice level. That was an act of war. War? The ambassador seemed genuinely puzzled. No, Admiral. That was resource management. Your species had placed its primitive structures in an area rich with materials we require. Europa is in our solar system. You have no right. Rights. The ambassador interrupted. Your concept of territorial rights is charmingly primitive, like how your apes might fight over a fruit tree. The council chamber went silent. Walker felt ice in his veins, but kept his expression neutral. We're not apes. We're an intelligent species with our own civilization. Our own rights. Of course you have rights, Admiral, the ambassador said soothingly. All developing species do. But those rights must be balanced against the needs of more advanced civilizations. Surely you understand. Then help us understand, Walker said. Work with us. Share knowledge instead of taking by force. The ambassador made that untranslatable gesture again. That would be unwise. Your species is still too aggressive, too undeveloped to manage even your own system properly. Your tendency toward violence makes you dangerous to yourselves and others. We were peaceful until you attacked us, Walker countered. Were you? The ambassador's light pulsed slightly. We've studied your history, Admiral. War after war, species extinction, environmental damage. You've nearly destroyed yourselves multiple times. No, Admiral. Apes must be caged for their own good. The transmission ended abruptly. Walker turned to face the council, whose expressions ranged from shock to fury. They won't negotiate, he said simply. They don't see us as equals to negotiate with. Then we fight, the council head said, though they outmatch us in every way. Walker looked back at the screen, where the Bright One ship still hovered over Europa like a predator over its kill. Not in every way, he said quietly. They think they know us. They've studied our past, our weaknesses. But they've missed something important. What's that, Admiral? Someone asked. When cornered, even apes become dangerous. Walker's eyes never left the screen. And we're not apes. We're humans. The declaration of war was issued the next day. Humanity, outgunned and outnumbered, prepared to fight for its very existence against an enemy that didn't even consider them worthy of respect. What the Bright Ones failed to understand was that in dismissing humans as primitive, they had awakened something primal indeed, the absolute determination to survive. Dr. Thomas Reed couldn't sleep anymore. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the blinding light and falling bodies at Europa. His wife and daughter had been among those who never made it to the escape pods. The Bright Ones had taken everything from him. He sat in his new lab on Mars base, surrounded by data on the Bright Ones' technology. Earth had managed to recover pieces of their equipment from skirmishes. Reed and his team worked day and night to understand how it worked. Dr. Reed, his assistant called. Lieutenant Hayes is here to see you. Hayes entered the lab, her uniform bearing new marks of rank. The war had forced rapid promotions for those who survived encounters with the enemy. Any progress? She asked without greeting. Time for pleasantries had disappeared with Earth's first colonies. Reed pointed to his screen. Their weapons, their ships, even their communication devices, they all used the same energy signature. They're manipulating stellar energy somehow, storing it, and shaping it to their needs. Can we disrupt it? Hayes asked, leaning closer. Reed smiled for the first time in weeks. I think we can. While Reed worked on weapons, Admiral Walker fought a desperate war. The Bright Ones expected humans to fight like they always had, with frontal assaults and direct confrontation. Walker gave them something different. Small, stealthy ships attacked and vanished. Old-style nuclear weapons, considered primitive by modern standards, were modified to create electromagnetic pulses that temporarily disrupted Bright One technology. Human soldiers used projectile weapons, bullets and rockets. When the Bright Ones expected energy weapons they could easily block. They think we're predictable, Walker told his captains. Let's prove them wrong. The Bright Ones grew frustrated. They had expected to crush the Apes quickly and return to harvesting resources. Instead, human resistance was like fighting ghosts. Strike, vanish, strike again where least expected. In his war room, Walker received Hayes and Reed 6 months into the conflict. We've discovered something, Hayes said, her eyes bright with rare hope. Show him, Thomas. Reed placed a small device on the table. This can disrupt their energy weapons for approximately 30 seconds. It's not much, but it gives our fighters a window. Walker picked up the device. How many can you make? Hundreds by next week. Thousands the week after. Walker nodded. This changes our tactics. We can move from defense to offense. The next battles showed a shift. Human ships, equipped with disruption devices, managed to destroy 3 Bright One vessels. It wasn't a turning point, but it was the first real success. The Bright Ones responded by bringing in larger ships and more forces. They still outnumbered and outgunned humans, but their reports back to their homeworld showed confusion. The primitive species fights with unexpected variations, one commander reported. They adapt quickly. They are still apes, came the response. Clever, but limited. Increase forces and end this minor resistance. Reed continued his work, studying everything they could learn about Bright One technology. Late one night, working alone, he made a discovery that he immediately classified at the highest level. He called only Hayes and Walker to his lab. Their entire civilization depends on stellar energy, he explained, showing complex equations on his screen. They harvest it, store it, use it for everything. It's why they wanted Europa. The ice contains traces of a material that helps them store stellar energy more efficiently. How does this help us? Walker asked. Reed's eyes were both haunted and fiercely determined. If they can manipulate stellar energy, so can we. But we can go further. We can potentially destabilize a star, make it flare, even go supernova temporarily. Hayes looked shocked. You're talking about a weapon that could destroy an entire solar system. I'm talking about a weapon that could target their home system, Reed said quietly. A weapon that would show them exactly who they're dealing with. Walker stared at Reed for a long moment. They killed your family. Yes, Reed admitted. But this isn't just about revenge. Look at the numbers. We're losing this war. Slowly but certainly. They have more ships, more weapons, more of everything. Our best efforts are just delaying the inevitable. Hayes studied the data. He's right, Admiral. At current rates, we have perhaps 2 years before they take Earth. Walker stood silently by the viewport, looking at the stars. The same stars he gazed at with hope when he first met the bright ones. Now each one represented a potential battlefield, or a potential weapon. How long to develop this star weapon? He finally asked. 6 months for a prototype, Reed said. With full resources. You'll have them, Walker said. But understand this. We're crossing a line. Make sure it's one we can live with. Reed thought of his daughter's laugh, his wife's smile. Some lines were crossed for us, Admiral. We're just responding in kind. Project Sunforge moved forward in complete secrecy. Only the highest levels of Earth's government knew what Reed and his team were building in the underground facility on Mars. The work consumed Reed. He barely ate or slept, driven by the dual engines of grief and determination. Outside the secure facility, the war continued to go badly for humanity. The Bright Ones had taken Jupiter's moons after Europa. Their resource extraction expanded, and their attacks grew bolder. Earth's outer colonies fell one by one. Hayes visited the Sunforge facility monthly, bringing news from the front lines and taking progress reports back to Walker. 6 months into the project, she arrived with deeper shadows under her eyes than usual. We lost Saturn yesterday, she told Reed as they walked through the facility. The mining stations, the research outposts, all gone. Reed nodded grimly. Casualties. Thousands, some evacuated in time. Hayes stopped walking and turned to face him. Thomas, we need this weapon. Soon. You'll have it within the month, Reed said. The prototype is nearly ready. But Anna, we need to talk about what this means. They entered Reed's private office, where a large display showed the weapon's design. It looked deceptively simple, a sleek cylinder that could fit on a small ship. The Bright One's technology taught us how to manipulate stellar energy, Reed explained. This device takes that principle and reverses it. Instead of drawing energy safely from a star, it pushes energy back in an unstable way, creating a solar flare, a supernova. Hayes asked. Something in between, Reed replied. It won't destroy a star completely, but it will cause massive eruptions, intense radiation, destruction on any nearby planets. He paused. If we use this on their home system, we're talking about genocide. Hayes was silent for a long moment. We know their home system. Lumina, 8 planets. Their homeworld has billions of Bright Ones on it. Yes, if we target their star, most will die. Reed's voice was flat. The survivors will be scattered refugees, just like they planned for us to be, Hayes said quietly. The next day, Reed presented the completed Sunforge prototype to a special session of the United Earth Council. Walker stood at his side as he explained how the weapon worked. Once deployed near a star, it will take approximately 1 hour to activate. The star will then begin destabilizing, leading to massive solar flares within 3 to 4 hours. The effects will last for decades, possibly centuries. The council chamber was deadly silent when he finished. Finally, the council head spoke. You're asking us to authorize the killing of billions. I'm asking you to save humanity, Reed replied. The Bright Ones will not stop. They see us as animals. They will take everything and leave us nothing. Arguments erupted. Some council members insisted they needed to try diplomacy again. Others argued that even in war, some weapons were too terrible to use. A few demanded immediate deployment against Lumina. Walker raised his hand for silence. Dr. Reed and I have discussed this at length. We propose a middle path. We test the weapon on an uninhabited star system near Bright One territory. We make sure they observe the test. Then we deliver an ultimatum: withdraw from our solar system, or we use it on Lumina. The debate raged for hours. Reed watched silently, thinking of Europa, of his wife's face, of his daughter who would never grow up. He didn't speak again until directly addressed. "Dr. Reed, as the creator of this weapon, what do you recommend?" Reed looked around the chamber, at the faces of people carrying the weight of humanity's survival. "I built this weapon to save humanity, not to destroy another species," he said slowly. "I support Admiral Walker's plan. Show them what we can do. Give them a chance to withdraw. But," he took a deep breath, "we must be prepared to use it if they don't." The vote was close. In the end, Walker's plan won by a narrow margin. Project Sunforge would go forward with a demonstration first. The Council authorized the full use of the weapon against Lumina only if the Bright Ones refused to withdraw after the demonstration. As they left the chamber, Hayes walked beside Reed. "Do you think they'll withdraw when they see what Sunforge can do?" Reed thought of the ambassador's condescending voice. "Apes must be caged for their own good." "No," he said. "Their greatest weakness is their arrogance. They'll never believe that apes could destroy them." "Then we're really going to do this," Hayes whispered. "Turn their sun to ash." Reed looked at her with eyes that had seen too much death. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." But in his heart, he knew it would. The mission to demonstrate Sunforge required the best pilots, the best ships, and perfect timing. Walker insisted on leading it himself. Earth couldn't afford any mistakes. "This is humanity's last stand," he told the crew assembled on the flagship Defiance. "Not just for those of us here, but for everyone back home. Every child. Every future we might have." The small fleet of 5 ships carried humanity's hopes. The Sunforge device, securely mounted on the Defiance, was surprisingly small for something that could reshape a star. Reed traveled with them, making final adjustments to his creation. "We need to choose the right star," Reed explained as they reviewed star maps. "Close enough to Bright One territory that they'll detect the test, but not one they're actively using." They selected a small, stable star in an empty system on the edge of Bright One space. Intelligence reports confirmed regular Bright One patrols in the area. Witnesses would be guaranteed. As they approached the target system, Hayes coordinated the mission from the command center on Mars. Her team monitored Bright One communications, making sure they would notice the demonstration. Entering target system, Walker reported, "No Bright One ships detected yet. But they'll come. They always do." The fleet positioned itself near the star, close enough for the device to work, but far enough to escape the initial flare. Reed began the final preparations. "Sunforge ready for deployment, Admiral," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Launch when ready, Doctor," Walker ordered. The device detached from the Defiance, its propulsion system guiding it toward the star. As it moved away, Reed monitored its systems from the ship. Deployment successful. Activation sequence initiated. 1 hour until effect begins. Walker ordered the fleet to pull back to a safer distance. Now they waited. Reed stared at his monitors, watching the device's progress. This was the moment his theories would be tested. The moment that would determine humanity's fate. 45 minutes later, sensors detected 3 Bright One ships entering the system. "Right on schedule," Walker said grimly. "They never can resist investigating unknown human activity." The Bright One ships approached cautiously, maintaining distance from the human fleet. A transmission came through. "Human vessels, this is Patrol Commander of the Bright Ones. Your presence in this sector is unauthorized. State your purpose or be removed." Walker glanced at Reed, who nodded. It was time. "Patrol Commander, this is Admiral Walker of Earth. We are conducting a scientific demonstration. We invite you to observe from a safe distance." The Bright One Commander's response was predictably dismissive. "Your primitive experiments are of no interest to us. Leave immediately." "I strongly suggest you watch," Walker said. What happens next will change everything between our species. The bright ones maintained position, clearly curious despite their arrogance. When Reed's monitor showed 15 minutes remaining, Walker opened a general broadcast channel. Attention Bright One command. This message is being transmitted to your homeworld as well. For too long, you have treated humans as lesser beings. You have taken our worlds, killed our people, and dismissed us as apes. Today, we demonstrate what these apes are capable of. On the view screen, the star began to shimmer strangely. Its surface rippled as energy patterns shifted unnaturally. What you are witnessing is technology derived from your own. Walker continued. We call it Sunforge. In approximately 10 minutes, this star will experience massive disruption. I suggest you move your vessels to minimum safe distance, which our scans indicate is beyond the system's outer boundary. The Bright One ships didn't move immediately. They seemed frozen in disbelief. Reed watched his monitors with intense focus. Energy fluctuations increasing, he reported. First flare imminent. The star's surface bulged outward, a massive prominence rising and twisting in ways no natural solar flare would. The prominence grew, brightening beyond safe viewing levels. The view screens automatically darkened to protect the crew's eyes. The Bright One ships finally began to retreat, accelerating rapidly. Too late, Reed whispered as his instruments registered the building wave of energy. The solar flare erupted with devastating force, expanding outward faster than anything they had modeled. One Bright One ship was caught in the edge of the blast, its shields failing immediately. The second ship suffered heavy damage. Only the third escaped intact. As the flare dissipated, the star continued to writhe, smaller eruptions cascading across its surface. Nearly a quarter of the star's outer layer had been blown away. Walker opened the channel again. This demonstration affected approximately 20% of this star's mass. Our weapon can be calibrated for greater effect. We have another Sunforge device prepared for deployment at Lumina, your home star. He paused, letting the implications sink in. You have 48 hours to begin full withdrawal from human space. If you refuse, we will do to Lumina what you just witnessed here. The choice is yours. As the fleet turned to head home, Reed stood at the viewport, watching the wounded star pulse with unnatural light. He had created something terrible, something that should never have been needed. But as he thought of Europa, of his family, he felt only grim resolve. Will they withdraw? He asked Walker quietly. The Admiral's face was like stone. If they're rational, yes, but they've never seen us as equals, never truly respected our capabilities. So you think they'll call our bluff? Walker turned to him. It's not a bluff, Doctor. That's what they need to understand. The 48 hours passed with no response from the Bright Ones. Instead, their ships gathered in greater numbers. Intelligence reports showed they were preparing for a massive assault on Earth itself. They don't believe we'll do it, Hayes said during the emergency council meeting. Or they think they can stop us before we deploy another Sunforge. Walker stood before the council, his face showing the strain of sleepless nights. The Bright Ones have ignored our ultimatum and are positioning for a final attack. Their communications indicate they plan to solve the human problem permanently. The council head looked around the table. Then we have no choice. Authorize deployment of Sunforge against Lumina. The vote was unanimous. Operation Sunfall would proceed immediately. This time, the mission would be different. No fleet of ships could reach Lumina unchallenged. Instead, a single stealth vessel would carry Reed, Walker, and a small team deep into Bright One territory. The ship, named Shadow, was built with every piece of technology humans had reverse-engineered from the Bright Ones. We have one advantage, Reed told the crew as they prepared to leave. They still think like Bright Ones, not humans. They expect direct confrontation, not infiltration. Hayes would not join this final mission. She remained on Earth to coordinate defenses against the coming attack. Her goodbye to Walker and Reed was brief. Come back if you can, she said simply, but finish the job either way. The shadow slipped out of Earth's orbit under cover of a larger battle. While Bright One forces engaged with Earth's defenders, the small ship activated its experimental stealth systems and vanished into the darkness. The journey to Lumina took 10 days. 10 days of silence, of tension, of wondering if Earth would still exist when they returned. Reed spent most of that time making final adjustments to the second Sunforge device. This one was calibrated for maximum effect. They reached Lumina's system undetected. Reed looked out at the bright, beautiful star that gave life to billions of bright ones. Their homeworld was visible too, a gleaming orb with artificial rings surrounding it. "It's magnificent," he whispered. Walker stood beside him. "Yes, and soon it will be uninhabitable. Are you having second thoughts, Doctor?" Reed thought about all that had led to this moment. "No, they gave us no choice, but I take no joy in it." The deployment went exactly as rehearsed. The shadow approached as close as safely possible, and the Sunforge device launched toward Lumina. The team began the activation sequence, then prepared to retreat at maximum speed. That's when everything went wrong. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Bright One vessels detected. The tactical officer shouted. They were hiding behind the third planet. 3 ships moving to intercept. Walker took command. "Evasive maneuvers. What's the status of Sunforge?" Reed checked his monitors. "Activation sequence at 60%. It needs at least 80% to trigger the reaction." A shadow twisted and turned, trying to avoid the approaching Bright One ships. They returned fire, but their weapons were lighter than normal war vessels, designed for stealth, not combat. The first hit shook the ship violently. Systems failed across the board. The second hit was worse, tearing through the shadow's hull. "We're losing power," the pilot reported. "We can't outrun them." Walker looked at Reed. "Will Sunforge still activate?" Reed worked frantically at his station. "Yes, if the sequence reaches 80%. We're at 72 now, but our transmission signal is weakening." "How much longer?" 3 minutes to 80%, if the signal holds." Walker made his decision. "All power to the transmitter and shields. We hold position as long as possible." Another hit rocked the ship. A crew member was thrown across the bridge, not moving when they landed. The lights flickered. 78%, Reed called out. "Almost there." The Bright One ships surrounded them, weapons charging for a killing blow. On the view screen, a transmission appeared. The Bright One commander spoke with amused contempt. "What did you hope to accomplish, little apes? Did you think we wouldn't detect you?" Walker stood straight, facing the screen. "We hoped you'd learn respect. We hoped you'd see us as equals. We hoped you'd leave us in peace." "Hope is for children and fools," the commander replied. Reed's station beeped. 80%. Sunforge is activating. The commander's expression changed as alerts sounded on their ship. "What have you done?" Walker's smile was cold. "We've done exactly what we said we would. You called us apes. Now watch as apes turn your sun to ash." The shadow took another devastating hit. Systems failed completely. As the ship began to break apart, Reed looked out the viewport one last time. In the distance, Lumina's surface was beginning to ripple and distort. The great star shuddered as if in pain. The Bright One ships turned away from the damaged human vessel, racing desperately toward their homeworld. But Reed knew it was too late. Nothing could stop the reaction now. As darkness claimed him, Reed's last thought was of his family. "It's done," he whispered to their memory. "It's finally done." 3 weeks later, Anna Hayes stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Guardian station, watching as the refugee ships arrived. The Bright One survivors, those who had been off-world when Lumina erupted, came not as conquerors, but as broken wanderers. "Captain," her aide said, "the Bright One representative is ready to sign the peace agreement." Hayes nodded. "And the terms?" "Full withdrawal from human space, recognition of human sovereignty, reparations for Europa and the other colonies." The war was over. Humanity had survived. But Hayes found no joy in victory, only grim satisfaction and quiet sorrow for all that had been lost. As she prepared to meet the Bright One representative, she remembered Walker's final transmission before the shadow was lost. Remember us not for what we destroyed, but for what we preserved. Hayes intended to honor that request. Humanity had proven it was not to be dismissed, not to be caged, not to be called apes. But in their darkest hour, they had also proven something to themselves, that even when fighting for survival, they could hold onto their humanity. That would be the true legacy of those who turned a sun to ash.